Hello everyone, we're Group C and we will be reviewing Case 8.6, which is Tylenol, the swing in product safety. First up, we will be reviewing some of the case facts. In 1982, 23-year-old Diane Esroff died after taking a Tylenol capsule laced with cyanide. Within 5 days, 7 more people died. The capsule form of pain reliever represented 30% of Tylenol sales. Consumers found it easy to swallow, and it worked faster. However, the capsule design made it easy to be taken apart, tainted, and then restored back into packaging without evidence of tampering. Executives realized that abandoning the capsule would give their competitors Bristol-Myers and American Home Products a market advantage. Johnson & Johnson quickly developed the Caplets, which was a tablet in the shape of a capsule. Johnson & Johnson eliminated a key product of its line, which was the capsule. Here are some more interesting facts about the case. President Ronald Reagan addressed a group of business executives and said, "Jim Burke of Johnson & Johnson, you have our deepest admiration. In recent days, you have lived up to the very highest ideals of corporate responsibility and grace under pressure." Within 1 year of Tylenol poisonings, Johnson & Johnson regained its 40% market share for Tylenol. There had been some preparation for change prior to the fatalities, but the tragedy ultimately became the motivation for change to safer packaging and product forms. As new issues arise with Tylenol, McNeil seems to give the benefit of the doubt because of their good reputation. To further expand on Ronald Reagan's argument that Johnson & Johnson lived up to the very highest of corporate responsibility and ideals, we bring in our first outside resource from the New York Times. What set apart Johnson & Johnson's handling of the crisis from others? It placed consumers first by recalling 31 million bottles of Tylenol capsules from store shelves and offering replacement products in the safer tablet form free of charge. It was also stated in the article that before 1982, no one ever recalled anything, said Albert Tortorella, a managing director of Bernstein Marsteller Inc., the New York Times public relations firm that advised Johnson & Johnson. Companies often fiddle while Rome burns. Johnson & Johnson could have not dealt with the difficult decision and pretended like nothing was wrong. But they did not do this. Instead, they found a different way to sell their product and placed consumers' health first. On December 21, 1994, the JAMA published the results of a 5.5-year study showing that moderate overdoses of acetaminophen led to liver damage in 10 patients. By 2001, 450 deaths resulted from liver failure due to Tylenol overdoses. The American Association of Poison Control Centers calls acetaminophen poisonings the most common of all reported. As a result, the FDA adjusted the adult and pediatric acceptable doses. McNeil had modified the recommended dosages, the ad claims, and language on its children's Tylenol labels to taking more than the recommended dose could cause serious health risk. McNeil also responded to data that showed patients who combined Tylenol with alcohol had produced 200 cases of liver damage in the past 20 years, with fatality in 20% of those cases. McNeil modified its labels to include bold warnings about alcohol use and the dangers of combining Tylenol. Here are some more interesting facts about the case. In May 2010, the FDA considered bringing criminal charges against McNeil due to the recall of 136 million bottles of liquid pediatric Tylenol, Motrin, Benadryl, and Zyrtec because the medicines contained too much metal debris. Due to the metal debris, the medicine batches failed FDA testings. However, prior to the testing and recall, there was evidence that McNeil was aware of the developing problem but took no public action or notified the FDA. McNeil received 46 complaints from consumers about black particles in Tylenol and other products and received complaints of a moldy smell in some of the products made in its Puerto Rican production facilities. The surreptitious removal of Motrin from retail stores because McNeil had discovered quality control problems with that product was referred to by the FDA as in effect and unannounced or phantom recall. Here are some more facts about the case. At another plant, the FDA found that the company knowingly used an ingredient that was tainted with Burkholderia cepacia, a bacteria that most healthy people can handle, but that can cause serious infections in those with chronic illnesses. As consumers began purchasing generic brands, McNeil's sales of Tylenol dropped 55%, a loss of $1.4 billion in sales. Its market share also dropped to number 8. As a result of Tylenol issues, the FDA began inspections of other OTC manufacturers that resulted in 43 letters being sent to OTC drug factories for its failure to correct shoddy manufacturer practices. FDA inspectors found insects in the equipment and ingredients. In the congressional hearing, the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform chastised McNeil's executives. The information I've seen during the course of our investigation raises questions about the integrity of the company. It paints a picture of a company that is deceptive, dishonest, and has risked the health of many of our children. Next, we will be reviewing the key players, assumptions, and dilemmas.
The next thing we're going to move on to is information that we want, and some of that being, has something like this happened to other medicine brands, and if so, what did they do about it? Were other consumers affected by any of the bottles that were recalled? How did this incident affect other medicine companies and how they went about producing their products? Were any standards or expectations set from what happened in this case for all medical brands to follow? How can companies continue to mandate and regulate their medicines through checks and other precautionary measures?
Alright, so now we'd like to go into some of the assumptions of the case. So the first assumption is that Johnson & Johnson invested in research and development to ensure Tylenol capsule could not be tampered with after the poisonings, but not enough to fully determine them as tamper-proof. So we assume that Johnson & Johnson, as a reputable company dealing with medical products and things that could harm the consumers if not treated properly, would have obviously invested in some R&D to determine the capsules were safe, but just so happens that this particular capsule could be broken into, which resulted in the deaths. And then the second assumption is that Johnson & Johnson knew that abandoning the capsule would give their competitors a market advantage and cost them, but they actually acted as a socially responsible company and abandoned them anyway. So this was actually, you would think that cyanide poisonings on consumers would be a tragic event that would lose a lot of market share, lose Johnson & Johnson and McNeil a lot of respect, but businesses actually respected them for being socially responsible and abandoning one of their most popular products, even when they knew that it would have quite a cost on their business revenue. So in a way, actually kind of earned respect for them, which is in the next point. Johnson & Johnson earned the respect of many leaders and businesses after abandoning their capsules. So this is kind of evident even after the poisonings. They regained 40% of the market share within a year of poisonings, which is kind of surprising to me, kind of shocking. You wouldn't really expect that. You'd expect something like that big with poisonings and deaths to really shake up their business structure for a long time. And then another assumption is consumers trust Johnson & Johnson / McNeil as a brand and took quickly to the caplets even after the poisonings, continuing to praise them for the recall. So again, this was just a really unexpected event where you normally, when a company makes a mistake or has a defective product, people are quick to completely ban the company, not want anything to do with it at all. But at this point in time, when this happened, it was actually really great that they took action for their responsibilities instead of hiding it. And so this really actually boded well for their business. All right, continuing with assumptions, the next assumption is that Johnson & Johnson did not do enough testing on the appropriate dosage of Tylenol for adults, leading to poisonings and liver damage. So there was about 10 adults total who had liver damage or poisoning after taking the Tylenol capsules. So perhaps if Johnson & Johnson may have done some additional testing on this and made sure to put on the label what amounts were safe for adults to consume, this may not have happened, because at least today on Tylenol bottles and other medicine bottles, it's very clear, broken down by age, how many capsules you should take in what amount of hours. And I'm assuming at this point, maybe they didn't have that detailed of information, so maybe consumers were misled and thought they could take as many pills as they want without damage, but that wasn't the case. And then continuing on, the second assumption is that the goodwill earned from the recall of capsules in 1982 did not lead to a loss of market share after the liver poisoning reports. So again, this case was a little bit unexpected in the way that consumers and the public reacted, because normally in today's world, we kind of have this idea of cancel culture, and this can apply to both social media and businesses. Even when you make one mistake and it's a PR disaster, PR has to go back and really try to fix everything that the company has done and all the damage done. But this wasn't the case back in the day, because even with an event that large, they were quickly forgiven, regained the market share. And even after these liver poisoning reports, Tylenol still kind of stayed a market leader and didn't really have too much of an effect from this. So this just goes to show how much the public respected them originally kind of being responsible for taking those capsules off the shelf in back when the cyanide poisonings happened. And then a next assumption is that in 2010, McNeil was aware that some of its medicines had too much debris or active ingredients to be safe, but did nothing about it. And after so much goodwill that they had earned and so much repeated chances, this kind of was the final straw for the FDA. So at this point, McNeil had had too many instances with products that were unsafe, consumers being hurt, and so finding these debris and ingredients that weren't safe kind of put the FDA over the edge, and they said, all right, no more chances, like this is serious now. And the next assumption is that McNeil did not take several complaints seriously, including black particles in products, moldy smells, and chemical contaminations. And so this kind of goes back to them trying to solve these issues on their own or brushing them under the rug. They did have an employee go and try to take Motrin products off the shelves kind of secretly as an experiment after there had been complaints about them having this kind of moldy smell to them. And if they would have taken it seriously, it's assumed that they would have gone straight to the FDA, gone straight to an investigation to solve the issue instead of trying to just kind of solve it internally and brush it under the rug. And then another assumption is that McNeil has been acting without integrity for a while, having improper testing practices and plants that violate inspections with insects in equipment and ingredients. And so this is kind of surprising that even kind of today, when we're so advanced in the way things are manufactured, there's such an efficient project management that goes into that and efficiency, that still McNeil is having insects in equipment and ingredients. That's just a little unsettling, and that's kind of another final straw, at least for the FDA, in regards to how McNeil runs their businesses and does things, and it kind of negates all the goodwill they might have earned after acting responsibly with the cyanide poisonings and even after the liver damage.
After covering the facts, assumptions, and more information we'd like to know, now we'll look at the ethical dilemmas surrounding the case. The first ethical dilemma we will discuss is the free pass the McNeil Company received by the FDA following the events in 1982. As we know, McNeil was praised for discontinuing the unsafe Tylenol capsules. McNeil, Johnson & Johnson, and Tylenol held a remarkable reputation by the FDA, which protected them from upcoming issues. This became an ethical dilemma for the FDA as they did not act accordingly to future occurrences based on the assumption that McNeil would always put consumer safety first. The next dilemma relates to the appropriate dosage of Tylenol and how it was linked to increased kidney and liver failure. It's assumed McNeil did not conduct adequate testing prior to releasing the dosage recommendation on their products. After a study came out connecting Tylenol to increased kidney and liver failure, the FDA adjusted the acceptable dosage. Once the study was released, Tylenol disclosed the harmful effects of acetaminophen poisonings and mixing the product with alcohol. Through 2008 to 2010, the company received complaints regarding product defects, metal debris, and a moldy smell, but failed to recall the products or notify the FDA. It's clear that prior to the public recall in 2010, which was authorized by the FDA, that McNeil was aware of the issue in production but took no public action. This raised awareness to the FDA that McNeil no longer had the consumer's interest in mind. Our last ethical dilemma covered by the case results from the FDA inspections of the Tylenol manufacturing facilities. McNeil was aware of the poor, unsafe practices that were continuing in the facilities, and production ultimately failed the inspections. McNeil did receive appropriate backlash, and the company earned a deceptive and dishonest reputation as a result.
Great, so now we'd like to dive into some of the people involved in this case, just so we can introduce some background context and how they played a role in everything. So, first person is Diane Elsroth. So this was actually the first person who died after taking a Tylenol capsule laced with cyanide. She was 3 years old. And then within 5 days of her death, 7 more people died from taking the tainted Tylenol purchased from stores around the Chicago area. So all of these deaths kind of were in the same place, but she was the one that was reported first, sadly. And then we have McNeil Consumer Products. So McNeil is basically a subsidiary of Johnson & Johnson, and they're responsible for Tylenol operations. And at the time when the cyanide poisonings were occurring, Tylenol had generated 525 million per year for McNeil. So they're a pretty big subsidiary of Johnson & Johnson. And then we have Bristol Myers and American Home Products. So these are both competitors against Tylenol and the McNeil brand. And they're important because when the executives were deciding whether to abandon the capsule or not, they kind of thought about these competitors and how abandoning the capsule altogether would really give them a market advantage, and it would cost $150 million just for the year 1982 for Tylenol and McNeil. So they were in the decision factors, I guess, of do we abandon the capsule, do we not abandon the capsule. And then we have Jim Burke. So he is the CEO of Johnson & Johnson, and he was the one that kind of made the final decision that the poison capsules should be abandoned, because he told the others that without a tamper-proof package for the capsules, they would risk the survival of not only Tylenol, but also Johnson & Johnson. And so ultimately, the executives decided to abandon the capsule with his guidance. And then we have Frank Young, and Frank Young is from the Food and Drug Administration, and he's a commissioner for them. So he was one of the ones who really praised this decision for Johnson & Johnson. And he said, "This is a matter of Johnson & Johnson's own business judgment and represents a responsible action under tough circumstances." And then we have someone else that also praised the decision of Johnson & Johnson to drop the product line, named Otto. So Otto was at Boston University's College of Communication, and he cited Johnson & Johnson in one of his works as a model of corporate social responsibility for its actions. And then Ronald Reagan, of course, is the U.S. president, or was the U.S. president, and he also praised McNeil and Johnson & Johnson for their decision. and he addressed a group of business executives, and he said, Jim Burke, Johnson & Johnson, you have our deepest admiration. In recent days, you have lived up to the very highest ideals of corporate responsibility and grace under pressure. So this is just another form of support for the decision. And then we have Dr. David Whitcomb finally. So he was at University of Pittsburgh Medical School, and he actually was the one that kind of spearheaded switching from cyanide to the liver poisoning. He was the one that found that taking one pill of acetaminophen or Tylenol per day for a year may double the risk of kidney failure. And then he was right, because by 2001, 450 deaths had resulted from liver failure due to Tylenol overdoses. So he was kind of the one that moved from the cyanide scandal to the next scandal, which was the liver poisonings. So yes. Now that we've covered some of the basics of the case, such as the facts, assumptions, and ethical dilemmas, we'd like to go into the 3 theories that we felt applied best to this case.
So the first theory we'll be looking at to apply to the Tylenol case is virtue ethics. First, we'll be explaining the virtue ethics theory and then applying it to this case specifically. To explain virtue ethics, it's an acquired set of virtues used to make decisions, and this is acquired either through learned or practice. Virtue ethics means doing what a person with good moral character would do. In truth, trust, self-control, fairness, empathy, tolerance, restraint are all necessary traits to have a successful society. It's a general theory, but it is used in a lot of ethical cases. So to apply to this one specifically, the decision to give up on the capsules and the steps taken after by Johnson & Johnson and McNeil to recall the product and create a safer substitute align with virtue ethics. They display the development of values like responsibility, honesty, and a commitment to the well-being of their customers.
The second theory we will be looking at for the Tylenol case study is utilitarianism. Utilitarianism is an ethical theory that focuses on maximizing overall happiness and well-being by making decisions that result in the greatest good for the greatest number of people. Based on the ethical dilemmas in the Tylenol case, utilitarianism is applicable because it judges actions based on the benefits they bring to society as a whole. Johnson & Johnson's decision to recall the unsafe Tylenol capsules in 1982 is in line with utilitarian ethics. By taking this action, the company prioritized the safety and well-being of consumers, which led to a large reduction in the potential for harm. This decision maximized the overall happiness by protecting the health and lives of consumers. The third theory that we will be discussing in this case study is Peter Drucker's. He quotes, "All above, do no harm." He encourages that others do not harm others. In this case, someone decided to tamper with a Tylenol capsule, which led to a woman dying. They made this decision and it caused harm to someone. They went against the Peter Drucker theory.
Alright, so now that we've gone over the facts of the case, some of the assumptions we've made, ethical dilemmas, and then we've gone over the theories, we're going to hop into the 3 resolutions for this case. Alright, so our first resolution is to invest in better, safer manufacturing processes such as FDA-approved equipment, more thorough testing processes, and regard for customer complaints and essential issues. And so this resolution kind of comes from the fact that in 2010, McNeil was aware that some of its medicines had too much debris or active ingredients to be safe, and they did nothing about it. So that just goes back to making sure the manufacturing testing is safe and that all products are not going to harm consumers. And then, of course, McNeil did not take several complaints seriously. There were customers who had complained about black particles in products, moldy smells, and chemical contaminations, and they really didn't take it seriously enough to address these issues. And then also, McNeil had been acting without integrity for a while. They had improper testing practices. They had plants that violated inspections with insects in the equipment and ingredients found. So McNeil just has a lot of work to do in the area of making sure both their ingredients, processes are safe, and that they take customer complaints more seriously than they do. All right, so on the last slide, I mentioned how one of the issues with McNeil is that they didn't take customer complaints very seriously, when in fact their products did have a problem and several issues with them. So I just wanted to pull in this outside resource, kind of elaborating on that. This is from NBC News talking about the Tylenol pain caplets that were recalled for their odd odor. So I'll go ahead and read this quote for you. Johnson & Johnson had recalled 5 lots of the product last month after consumers complained of a musty, mildew-like odor that triggered nausea, stomach pain, vomiting, and diarrhea. And so then there on the right, you can see a little bit more details of this recall that was advertised on TV. So it was for the Tylenol 8-hour caplets. They were 50-count bottles, and they had a little bit of a moldy odor to them. So this just kind of supports the point that McNeil wasn't taking the safety of their product seriously, and there needs to be changes made to their processes. Okay, so now let's hop into some of the cost of implementing this resolution, of making sure the manufacturing processes are right, that all the products are safe, and that customer complaints are being accounted for. So the first cost would be increased research and development cost, or R&D cost. And so this cost would come because investing in safer practices means investing in better research and development practices. And these research and development procedures would help McNeil and be crucial for McNeil when thoroughly examining complaints and issues such as these moldy smells and black particles in products. So anytime you change a process or way things are done in a company, especially a manufacturing plant, that's obviously going to come with a cost to spend time working out some of the flaws in the system, creating a better system. That's a lot of labor, that's a lot of planning, so hefty cost there with changing up that process. And then of course the second is increased maintenance costs. So increased maintenance costs means upkeeping plants that are clean and safe. That would require a little bit of extra quality inspections, more frequent cleaning sweeps, and then of course a labor force to do all these tasks in the first place. And so just making sure that the facilities themselves are clean and in good condition is obviously going to come at a little bit higher cost. Alright, so now I want to go into the legalities of Resolution 1. So the first is abiding by FDA guidelines. So going forward, McNeil would have to strictly make sure to abide by these guidelines, since they really haven't in the past, or have been a little bit loose in the guidelines in the past. But now with so many of these scandals and deaths and reports of products that are unsafe, it's very crucial to make sure they notify the FDA of customer complaints. They're undergoing and following through on inspections of their processes and manufacturing plants, and making sure that all the ingredients are safe and untainted, and going through the FDA required steps to make sure those ingredients are safe. And then not only following guidelines, but also being transparent with the FDA is another legality. McNeil needs to make sure that they are fully upfront anytime an issue or something that looks wrong, that shouldn't be happening, does happen. So for example, in the case it mentioned that they hired a contractor to remove defective Motrin products, and instructed him to go through on the shelves and just kind of take the bad products off the shelves, but did not make mention of the recall to the FDA, did not make it public. So that's obviously something that's not a great business practice, very much against being transparent with the FDA. So going forward, McNeil just needs to make sure that the FDA or FDA is notified of any issues as soon as they happen and doesn't try to kind of mask or hide any apparent issues they think, like hiring an employee to go take Motrin products off the shelf without telling anybody. So finally, I would like to go into the impacts of resolution number 1. So the first impact is going to be earning consumer trust. So engaging in more ethical business practices would help earn back consumer trust after this series of scandals that happened. Because at a point, sales of Tylenol actually dropped by 55% and lost Tylenol $1.4 billion. So correcting these practices would just help to earn back the goodwill customers once had before the cyanide poisonings and all of these other scandals, such as the moldy products, the tainted manufacturing equipment, and all of the scandals that have been discussed in the case. So the next impact would be increased safety. So making sure that plants are safe and ingredients are clean would mean that McNeil customers aren't at risk when consuming McNeil's products. Consumers would no longer have to worry about these moldy smells from products or products that contain black particles that could be damaging to their health. So overall, consumers would just be more willing to purchase Tylenol as they once did, with these increased safety measures and knowing that McNeil was following these FDA guidelines.
The next few slides we're going to be talking about resolution number 2. The second resolution is for Tylenol to bring in a quality control consultant and put in place a board of quality control can continuously monitor the products and ensure its quality and the safety for end users. So Tylenol clearly has a problem surrounding quality control. They've had scandal after scandal happen within the product lines, and they never seem to develop a long-term solution. This consultant that they want to bring in will act in a similar manner as an audit for a financial statement, except he will be evaluating the validity in quality control processes, and he'll be ensuring that the proper internal quality controls are put into place. Some costs of resolution number 2 are increased operation expenses, so they will have to hire some outsources, like an impartial consultant who has no ties to the business to find quality control issues, which will hurt the company bottom line, but in the end it'll also benefit the company. Number 2, cost of fixing underlying quality control issues. If the consultant or board finds an issue with the quality control, it will cost more money to fix that issue. The legalities of solution number 2. The consultant will ensure McNeil is abiding by all laws and standards currently in place to keep all customers safe while using these products. This will also prevent lawsuits and legal issues surrounding Tylenol, and it will allow the FDA to come and fine them multiple times because they won't have things to be fined about. In this slide, I'll be talking about the impact of resolution number 2. Tylenol has really impacted their customer loyalty and things like that with all of these lies that they've been telling. They now have all the customers questioning the integrity of the company. Tylenol has also painted a picture of itself being despicable, dishonest, and has risked the health of many of their children, or our children. It will take the company a long time to restore the confidence of the customers, because you'll not just go to the store anymore and always pick Tylenol over any other brand, because you never know if Tylenol is actually going to be healthy for your child or worsen your child's health.
Resolution number 3 for Tylenol is to use quality and tamper-evident packaging to decrease tampering. In this picture right here, this packaging was a packaging they used that got tampered with. So as you can see, the capsules are easy to take apart. There's no plastic that covers them, which is like the tamper-evident packaging, and then it comes in like this cardboard box here.
Here we have our third and final outside resource. This resource further expands on the argument for our third resolution: reduce tampering and increase the quality of packaging. Johnson & Johnson communicated their new triple safety seal packaging: a glued box, a plastic sear over the neck of the bottle, and a foil seal over the mouth of the bottle. With a press conference at the manufacturer's headquarters, Tylenol became the first product in the industry to use the new tampering-resistant packaging just 6 months after the crisis occurred. Packaging matters in the global pharmaceutical industry. Trust, adherence to regulations, customer health, shareholder value, they all rely on getting the right product and with the correct dosage. Tylenol took the correct steps when they increased the quality of packaging in order to reduce the tampering issues they were having at the time.
So resolution number 3, the cost. One of the major costs that Tylenol would have to have is their material quality. Buying quality materials such as packaging and capsule material can be very pricey compared to cheaper, less quality options. Lots of times companies try to go with the cheaper, less quality options so that they can compete with other brands with low prices. So it will cost them more to have these material qualities. And then the security features, the packaging and capsules in this case would need tamper evident security, and this adds to additional cost. So in outside source number 3, it mentioned how they had the secure glue and the extra packaging, which is the tamper evident security packaging that will let customers know if someone's tampered with this product, which adds additional cost. So competing with other brands is another cost. Spending money on material quality and security features increases the cost, which increases the price of the product, making it more difficult for Tylenol to compete with other low-priced brands. Resolution number 3, legalities. So lots of the legalities for any drug product and for Tylenol comes from the FDA, which is the Food and Drug Administration. Outlined in 21 CFR Part 211 and 21 CFR Part 700, the FDA requires tamper-evident packaging for OTC, which is over-the-counter products, Tylenol being one of those. So companies must have tamper-evident testing to ensure it works. So within their manufacturing product process, they have to ensure that they have this evident testing available and within their records. Labeling must involve instructions on how to see if product has been tampered with. So for the customers and consumers of this product that are buying this product, it's important that there's labeling and instructions on how to tell if someone has tampered with a product. And then records of tamper-evident efforts. So having records of adding that glue to the packaging and adding that extra plastic security over the bottle is a must-have to keep in the records at Tylenol, so that they can show that they have had efforts to decrease the amount of tampering with their products. And then also records of events of tampering is important as well, so that they can look back at the history and improve from there. Resolution number 3, and the impact. So catching tampering more readily is the biggest impact that we are trying to create here. So with this aluminum seal, for example, over this bottle, you can see that the bottle has been tampered with, and it is a sign to not use that bottle because of the tampering that was done and occurred in the situation. So this helps with customer safety and security in buying this product. The customer is also more confident in buying this product because of these features. And then the company confidence as well. So the company feels more confident because they have these tamper-evident features, for example, that reduce the tampering, and they are more confident in selling this product and putting this product on the shelf. And then there's overall satisfaction from the customer, enjoyment of this product, because if the product's not tampered with, then you are less likely to feel ill from this product or less likely to get drugged from this product, which is always a benefit from these security features. And then in turn, the company is getting return customers because the customers feel safe and satisfied with the product.
Next, we will go over our final recommendation and the discussion questions. Here, we will review our final recommendation. Tylenol has had a long history of poor manufacturing processes. If they were to invest in better and safer manufacturing processes, such as FDA-approved equipment, more thorough testing processes, and regard for customer complaints and potential issues, they would not run into as many problems. Investing in safer practices means investing in better research and development practices. Keeping the manufacturing plants clean would lead to less inspections. Correcting their practices with more FDA-approved methods could lead to more profits, as customers would trust the product and not be at risk for any health issues that could occur when using the product. This is our final recommendation because with the improved equipment, more thorough testing, and actually listening to the customers, Tylenol would see their profits skyrocket, and also customers would be safe. Finally, we will review the discussion questions. Our first question: was the criminal charges brought upon McNeil in May of 2010 justified? What sort of punishments should McNeil's executives been given for their unethical business behavior? Our second question: why do you think the company hid evidence of faulty products from the FDA? What was the goal of not notifying the FDA of consumer complaints?